Hello everyone, welcome back to the TJOmega channel for day 1095 of our daily content grind. Today, we are once again doing a top 10 of a particular year, and this year it is 2010, and things start getting very complicated. This is an in-between year that still has a ton of things going on. We're at the tail end of Revenge of the Fallen, we're getting Hunt for the Decepticons and Reveal the Shield, we're getting the beginnings of the Generations line that continues to this day. We've got a few human alliances in the works, Masterpiece is asleep, Alternity is still a thing, Disney label's a thing, Device label's a thing. This is the first list out of this entire thing where I've had to like double, triple, quadruple check to make sure I'm not forgetting anything, because there are so many good toys, but also nothing that's like huge, like obvious winner. So this one was a really weird year to judge and categorize. So I've done the best of my ability. Okay, so with no further ado, let us begin one of the weirder lists of this entire project, the top 10 Transformers of 2010. We are going to start off with the tail end of Transformers Animated because, well, frankly, they're still really, really good toys, though at this point they became less eventful and more kind of like standard fare. But you know what? I could still put a few in this list, but the one I'm going to pick is RC. This is kind of notable because even though Hasbro was terrified of making her pink, this is the first time RC was actually a car. The first time that an RC toy came out that tried to actually do the G1 thing and make her some kind of this, really low to the ground kind of sports car. And it worked. It actually worked really, really well. The double-bladed swords hiding inside the back kibble, the traditional like RC kibble on her shoulders, works great. That's a perfect use for them. Doubles as effect parts for the exhaust too, which I thought is a great little touch. And overall, just a really solid figure. And avoids so many. We have so many car RCs that can't handle the problem that the original car RC toy managed to avoid. She is actually feminine without being like a shell former. She has a good distribution of her vehicle mode bulk in order to make her robot mode. She's a very solid feeling RC toy and very fun as a result. Very, very solid figure. Late arrival to animated, but you know what? Fully accepting. Fantastic toy all around. Nothing quite surprises me more than putting a Revenge of the Fallen toy on this list when I have so many other toys to pick from, but I've always had an affinity for this one. I think it's a brilliant design in every direction. Let's talk about Mindwipe. First off, I think using a stealth jet as the basis for the vehicle, perfect, because that does kind of invoke the shape of a bat fairly well. I do really like that. I like the robot mode a lot. I love the red coming through on the two-tone dark military greens. It's a cool look without it looking Christmassy. I like the beady eyes behind the translucent red visor. It creates such a creepy expression and look on the toy. Overall, just nice and solid. A very refreshing figure after all the over-complex figures that Revenge of the Fallen featured. And then little details like, yeah, there's a basic class figure, a scout class, that can mount on top. That's also a good toy, barely missed the list. I love the underslung daggers. That's such a cool way of using the kibble parts for the cockpit. And just overall, just really good feeling, good looking toy. Really, really like this one a lot. One of those where I'm like, can Studio Series do this again? Can I just get this in leader class so I can get an even better articulated version of it? Alas, no. But I think it stands as a really, really cool figure. Great way of using a G1 inspiration for a movie-style toy and still come up with something completely unique. You're going to think I'm nuts for this one, because frankly, there's just a lot of toys in 2010 that we could pick from. A lot of really good toys barely missed the cut. Breacher missed the cuts. Sea Spray missed the cut. Skystalker missed the cut. Who else missed the cut? A lot. Drift. Drift barely missed. He would have been number 11. But I have to put this on. I need space for Buzz Lightyear. Because this doesn't do a single thing wrong. Technically it does because the Headmaster trick doesn't quite fit. But you know what? It's still really, really good. Surprisingly so. This is doing everything that a crossover figure really should do. You've got a dead-on accurate Buzz Lightyear. They didn't robofy it the way they did the other Disney label toys. And then he just transforms into his space shuttle. And that's exactly what you want the Buzz Lightyear Transformer to do. It's doing everything perfectly. On top of that, put in some decent articulation. The Headmaster gimmick, while it doesn't fit all that great in the, not robot mode, action figure mode, still does what it's supposed to do and creates the pilot figure for the vehicle mode, which gives you that level of play value. If you're a Toy Story fan, there's really nothing wrong here. It's the craziest toy. It really is. And to come from Disney label that had done the weird Optimus Mickey and Bumblebee Donald, going for Buzz Lightyear is the third, omitting a lot of the other staples from the Disney legacy cast. Probably a really good choice because this figure comes together really, really good. It's just a really, really well done crossover toy. Potentially one of the best Hasbro, or Takara in this case, has ever done. This one might be a personal favorite, but recent attempts to update this toy has really cemented the fact that I love the original a lot. Let us talk about the War for Cybertron Megatron. This was one of the very first generation toys released, and I think it was an extremely strong way to start. For starters, I love the look of the Megatron. He does look Cybertronian in the robot mode, very stylized, very futuristic, and very ominous and powerful. Really, really like it. Like the hits of the translucent purple. I like the spread of the red color over him. Looks a lot more dynamic than Megatrons typically do. And then you get the cannon mode. Well, tank mode, but it looks like a cannon. And that's kind of like a weird, splitting the difference kind of thing on what to do with his alt mode, because he just looks like a big rolling weapon, which is what you want. What was really nice about this one, aside from just the fact that it's a nice, simple, just do it and just good feeling transformation without being overly thought out, it's also just clever. Because you have the hover vehicle, the hover tank that he is in the video game, but you can also fold those out to become traditional treads. And using those as the arms means they don't get in the way of anything in the robot mode either. The robot mode, extremely clean. I love clean, kibbleless robot modes that still turn into really cool things. And I really, really like this toy for it. I tried playing with the new one. It's kind of messy. It really doesn't invoke the same vibe that this toy does. I would genuinely call the original one better. But, we need to talk about that another day. For now, suffice to say, for 2010, yeah, this was one of my favorites. Here's one that might not be nearly as controversial because I think everyone went nuts over this toy when it first came out because it is such a cool new take on a traditional style of Decepticon. Let's talk Terra-dive, because this thing was impressive. So for starters, the spear and trident weapon, that's super unique. We very rarely get a weapon like that in Transformers. You got the reverse wing vehicle mode, which is usually just Cyclonus's thing, so it's great to see someone else try it out. I do like the color scheme. It's mixing white and orange in a way that's avoiding the kind of almost kind of avoiding the creamsicle look. The black is doing just enough to keep it from doing that. White's doing enough to keep it from looking Halloween. It's a great balance. It's the robot mode, though. It's the robot mode and how it's handling all of its parts. The cockpit and the tail fins coming together to form, not the tail fins, but the side fins coming together and forming that, really cool, unique-looking chest. The wings going to the legs rather than the back. The tail fins going to the back to give that traditional but not out there silhouette. It's doing a lot of unique things. And that is really, really special about the toy. It's a lot of fun. Brilliant design. And brilliantly unique. I would love them to try this one again. If only to just come up with a jet that just doesn't look like a twist on a Starscream. This was it. This was a fantastic way to do it. Would love to see it again. But for now, we're stuck with the old figure, which is not a bad thing, because the old figure, still pretty good. Human Alliance stuff is pretty surefire for these lists. They are just really solid, good toys overall. So, yeah, no surprise that more would end up on here. And one who desperately needed the upgrade was Jazz. Oh boy. Oh man. So, coming off of his original deluxe figure that was bulky in the wrong ways and thin in the wrong ways, this one does its best to mitigate that and just make a nice, solid movie Jazz toy. Looks a little bit spindly, but beyond that, looks really, really nice. You know, it's a nice, decent representation of how he looked in the movie. The articulation is great. The transformation is smooth. You've got the really nice play pattern that, you know, Human Alliance had with the minifigure. The great thing about the minifigure, the Lennox here, is that he actually has his own motorcycle. So not only can he ride inside, but he can also have this little scout bike thing. But the scout bike transforms into Jazz's big shield cannon weapon from the movie, which is such a perfect way of using that big honking accessory to still come up with something that, you know, works in the play pattern and actually add some extra features to the toy. Overall, really, really solid job on the toy in general. Yeah, we'll see Human Alliance again. Like, as I said, like, I feel like this is such a perfect, like, transition from alternators to these that, no surprise, a lot of them were really, really good. And Jazz definitely ranks up there. There are some figures from this era that I can look at and genuinely say, I think I still like those better than the modern versions of them. We talked about the War for Cybertron Megatron in that regard, but it's not the only one on the list that is in that category. Let's talk Jazz again, but this time it is the the hunt for the Decepticons Jazz. This was a weird period where the movie line started getting a little bit of G1 stuff snuck into it, which is kind of funny when you look back on it. However, the toy itself, I could still say is better than a lot of the modern Jazz toys we've gotten. The Studio Series 86 one, certainly the Power of the Primes one. The vehicle mode looks fantastic. You know, it looks close enough to the Porsche without actually involving any kind of copyright infringement. The transformation is nice. You get some, like, the old, like, little bit of automorph in there that works well. You get a very solid Jazz toy overall, in the overall look of it. And then just features. I love the features of this figure. The weapon transforms out, which is neat. The speakers that flip up from the car doors to replicate some of the additional sonic weapons and music that he would play in the original cartoon. That's a really good trick to pull. The fact that those can come off and combine with his handgun. Now you're working this whole gimmick system in. This was the age of, like, that C-clip system where you could start rearranging your stuff however you wanted. And it uses itself to great effect on this toy. It's just a dead solid Jazz figure. Highly posable, very solid, good transformation. Felt like it belonged with Transformers Classics, even though it released 4 years later. And to this day, I still think one of the better retailed Jazz toys we ever got. And arguably, yes, better than his modern ones. We have yet to get into the really big gimmicky stuff for the year, so of course we're going to start talking about some of them because, frankly, at this era, there were a lot of these big leader class toys that were really, really good and could still work in a lot of gimmickry and a lot of extra parts and effects without really hurting the overall toy experience. So we can start with Bumblebee, for instance, who, yes, had a leader class toy. Wildly out of scale, but this was when Hasbro started figuring out maybe just big name characters can be leader class toys and we'll just run with it. You know, as opposed to today where anyone can be a leader class at this point. But this was a really solid Bumblebee. Lots of little things you can do. Like the battle mask was actually a present on this toy. So you had both the normal or you could transform the head for the battle mode. You had the flip-out guns and the lights. You had the big arm gimmick, which could make his arm cannon transform into his normal arm. It basically just made his hand stick out, and then like push the barrel forward. Point being, they managed to work in a transforming arm gimmick into this toy on top of just making it a really good-looking Bumblebee that transforms into a dead solid Camaro. You know, yes, it loses a little bit of function as an action figure because, yes, it's gimmicky a little bit here and there, but for the most part, it's doing a lot of things right. Nothing to really argue about. Like, it's just a really solid, big Bumblebee that does a whole lot. And I can't really argue that. You're loaded with features, you look really good, you still manage to keep some great articulation. Alright, you can earn a spot on the top 3. I can't argue with that. I try to stay objective for these lists and acknowledge when a toy that, even if it's a design I do not personally care for, I will acknowledge that the toy itself is done exceptionally well. It's well painted, well detailed, well everything, even if I'm not personally a fan of the character or the design. And that's why we have to talk about Big Dorito Starscream at number 2. Because there really isn't anything going wrong here. So you've got a fantastic looking jet mode. Like, ridiculous levels of paint in order to get all those Cybertronian tattoos from the second movie accounted for. All of that included is fantastic. You've got the hidden weapons that are all over him. You've got the mouth opening gimmick, which is something they pulled from the animated leaders. Loaded with accessories, loaded with articulation, and yeah, you know, this was, until like Studio Series came along, like the best interpretation of this Starscream you could possibly get. And thanks to all the leader class toys they did for Revenge of the Fallen, he actually did have a place. You actually could have a collection that was just these really big characters. You know, him with Megatron looked great together. Though this one, yeah, probably functionally a better toy with more features than that Megatron did. So yeah, I'm gonna put it higher up on the list. Not a fan of the design, but when you've got so much stuff going on the toy, and again, you just do such a good job of still making it an action figure, I have to give you all the credit in the world. It's doing an exceptionally good job and produces an exceptionally good toy. So congratulations, Movie Starscream. This is the highest accolade I will ever award you. Size doesn't matter, though, especially when you're talking about bang for your buck. How good did the toy feel versus how much you paid for it? So, in that case, number 1 has to go something that shouldn't be possible, but they made it work. Something that is technologically impressive, even though we've technically already seen it. Feels like cheating, but I have to acknowledge Battleblade Optimus Prime is the best toy of 2010, because frankly, this is a smaller version of the leader class Optimus Prime that was so good the year prior. They worked in just about everything. Like, it still transforms into a really solid looking truck. It still has a really great range of articulation in robot mode. Most of the transformation tricks from the leader class are maintained. This one actually has the matrix of leadership that you can reveal and take out. You know, on top of just the fact that, yeah, like, it's just going to scale so well with the majority of your movie toy collection, and it looks really, really good as Movie Optimus Prime. This is something that shouldn't have been possible. Like, this kind of, like, miniaturization you normally see out of, like, knockoffs and third parties, but Hasbro doing it was kind of crazy at the time. And with such a, like, doing it with one of the most complex Transformers ever made, especially to that point, and then managing to shrink it down into a Voyager class level, that is technologically impressive. That just produces a really good, really convenient Transformer that gives you that same experience without breaking the budget on a leader class, without taking up a huge amount of shelf space, and while still keeping your collection nice and consistent in size. For that, and for just the fact of just being really good overall, yeah, I'm making Battleblade Optimus Prime my top toy of 2010. But that is my opinion. As always, you are free to have your own, and I'm sure there's something I left off. Someone's going to be mad that Drift missed the cut. It just happened to be a really, really good year. From here on out, we are inundated with Transformer lines that are going to compete for each other great toys are going to be left off the lists from now on, and it's all just going to be what I felt was the top 10. So there you go. That's how it's going to be. So I'll see you next week for the start of that. Until then, thank you very much for watching. I will see you next time.